Hey everybody, my name is Shibby. I'm an esports colorcaster and Celestial ranked player in Marvel Rivals, and in today's video, we are going to be going over the way too early meta report for Season 4.5. Now, Season 4.5 just dropped on Friday, October 10th. It is now Wednesday, October 15th, and we already have a really good understanding of what the meta looks like. I'll be going over all the heroes that have been dominating the Vanguard, Duelist, and Strategist roles so that you guys can work on your ranked climb. I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's just get into it. As always, we are going to start off with the Vanguards, and I'm happy to announce that there is a new holy trinity of tanks. These Vanguards include Emma Frost, Magneto, and Doctor Strange. Now, I think these three have a lot of high base value within their kits and are ever rarely a bad pick except for very niche situations, aka picking double shield into full melee team comps. I also think they are part of the Holy Trinity because any two pairings of these three tanks gives you a formidable front line to build the rest of your team out with. Emma and Magneto have been the premier tank duo for the past couple seasons. They are very, very strong with their team up, and we're all very aware of how good they can be. Magneto and Strange has been around since Season 0. They're the best double shield tank composition, and they can help you deal with any sort of ranged DPS, whether it's projectile, hit scan, or even flyers. Now, Emma and Strange, albeit seen a little less than the other two pairings I mentioned, are still very good because both of them cover each other up with their weaknesses. Now, Emma is really good at dealing with a lot of those melee heroes that Strange can struggle with, and because Emma can CC them, Strange has a lot of follow-up damage with his new Maelstrom of Madness and his cooldown. So you can understand when there's a melee hero potentially pressuring the Doctor Strange, Emma can now come in, grab them, CC them up, and these two tanks can actually 100 to 0 a DPS that's either diving or even some of those melee tanks and get them relatively low. I like all three of these tanks in majority of situations. I think Emma and Magneto are very good. Magneto is by far the best defensive / utility tank in the game. Bubble is amazing, Shield is amazing, his ultimate still one of the few ultimates in the game that can completely one-shot supports and change the tides of battles while it's happening. Emma, you obviously know why she's good. She's been the best tank in the game since her release. She's got really good CC. She's got really good range damage. I think the most underwhelming quote-unquote part about her kit is probably her ultimate, but you can combo it with other DPSs if you can get that hypnotize going. And obviously, Doctor Strange, I think he's a DPS monster at the moment. Because of his reduced cooldown on his Maelstrom of Madness, he has been able to get his ultimate up very quickly, and he's by far, out of the three tanks, he gets the most ultimates off in a round. Eye of Agamotto is a game-changing ultimate, and when comboed with one of your other DPSs, you can absolutely dominate fights, and you as the Strange player can be a difference maker and absolutely carry fights and carry teams to a victory. The next tank on this list is going to be Venom. He is by far the best dive tank in the game, and honestly, prior to his ultimate changes, he was still the best dive tank in the game. The fact that his Feast of the Abyss now applies a 30% healing reduction onto anyone he hits makes him infinitely more valuable into those really high healing double support lines like Luna Snow and Invisible Wind, as well as those triple support lines that heavily rely on rotating support ultimates. It also makes it so that his Feast of the Abyss can not only be used on the back line to reduce healing and potentially go for kills, but he can also ult the frontline tanks and make it so that you can open up kill windows that didn't exist because of all the burst healing that's going to be reduced because of his ult landing on them. He's also got the best survivability out of any of the dive tanks in the game, right? If you think of Captain America, Hulk, yes, I think he outvalues Captain America generally as long as Cap doesn't have his ultimate. Venom has a massive shield on his E. He has a massive shield on his ult as well. Also, if you are using your dive correctly and you're not swinging in and diving only, and you're, kind of diving off of walls and you can save your swing for the escape, it makes you that much harder to kill and that much harder to deal with, especially if you can get those dives off without using your E the first time and then swinging back in for a redive right after with any of your, dive DPS. He pairs up very well with Magic, very well with Psylocke. Pretty much any dive DPS in the game, he can match their speed and their burst, which is something I think Hulk, Captain America, I would even argue pseudo dive tanks like Thor and Angela just can't do. Venom is the premier dive tank, and if you haven't already picked him up, I would highly recommend it because he's already dominating high elo. He's the second most banned tank in Grandmaster Plus, and it's for good reason. The next tank on my list has been removed from the team up shackle. I think Hulk is in a very good spot at the moment, especially because with less bans getting thrown his way, he's actually risen as a solid brawl/dive tank option that can seamlessly jump between the two. Also, with Venom and Emma receiving a majority of the bans for Vanguards, his value rises as those heroes are removed from the game. Emma being his biggest counter, as well as Venom being the premier dive tank, he becomes a lot more valuable in that sense, and he's allowed to function a lot more properly in games that we've been seeing, and the results have been amazing. I think he's got a lot of good underrated utility. His Gamma Bubble can block a lot of good ultimates, as well as his Exile can completely nuke people like Strange out of their ultimates, as well as other individuals. His Monster Hulk form has a really, really high skill ceiling with the way you can juggle individuals, and you can do a lot of damage as long as you master when you can jump in, when you can jump out, and how to really use your monster ultimate into its biggest advantage. I think Hulk is a little underrated because we just haven't been seeing him a lot. He's also got like quote unquote simple mechanics or a simplistic play style. But I think if you want to master Hulk, especially because if you're like a Venom player, or, you know, now that you see that the team up isn't there anymore and you're not getting banned out, or Emma's getting banned out more, I think Hulk's super valuable. And again, because he can transition into a brawl tank or dive tank, you can kind of pair him up with a lot of the different DPS in the game. He also does well with ranged DPS because he can put pressure on the back line, which allows your ranged DPS to actually go and duel other individual enemy DPSs without having them to worry about a pocket from like a Luna Snow, an Invisible Woman, a Rocket, or whatever. He's got really good chase down potential and is a very mobile tank, kind of like Venom, albeit not as tanky in that sense. You do have to be careful when you're jumping in and out, but I think that's just something you'll be able to pick up innately as you play Hulk, and I highly recommend picking him up if Venom and Emma are more consistently banned out like we've been seeing. The next tank on my list is not necessarily hard meta, but the player base has been getting better and better with her. Angela sits at a 53% win rate in Grandmaster Plus, which is pretty good for a hero that was just released 1 month ago and was initially touted as a relatively bad hero. She does play fundamentally different from the traditional Vanguards, and your frontline seems a lot weaker when you're playing with her or as her, because she's just a very selfish tank, right? She has a very selfish playstyle, but her displacement is really, really valuable, and dare I say more valuable than Wolverine's because of the ability to skewer multiple people, especially when you can get her onto those maps where you can take enemies into the abyss. Getting a multi-man skewer into a double elim off the map is arguably one of the highest value things you can do as Angela. She's also a relatively solid brawl tank. They did buff her in her brawl sense when she's in her Axis form to give both herself and her teammates more bonus HP, which is really, really nice, as well as when she ults. It has a lot of combo potential, and quite frankly, I think it's even better than Groot's, especially because you have to destroy it, and it takes a relatively long time to destroy. Any sort of follow-up like Winter Soldier, Moon Knight, any big AoE ultimate comboed with Angela can absolutely wipe teams off the map, and you build it relatively quickly, especially if you're going in and out and getting a lot of skewers and maximizing the potential of her Axis form. I think she's pretty good, and I don't think she's meta just quite yet or hard meta, but I think give it a month, give it maybe 2 more months, we're gonna start seeing Angela get banned more and more because of how good she is. Before we get into Duelists, I just want to shout out everybody that's shown me so much love over my past couple videos and these past couple months. You guys have been absolutely amazing. We had a 700 subscriber goal. You guys hit that out of the park. And I just recently celebrated one of my videos, my problem with support video, hitting 10,000 views. It's now at 17,000, which is absolutely amazing. You guys, again, are awesome. I've just been really enjoying all the comments, the DMs I get about my videos, talking about how helpful they've been, how informative they are, how they like the quality of the video. And really, that's what keeps me going when I make these videos, because I genuinely just make this for the Marvel Rivals community and my little community that I've fostered here. I want to try to be as helpful and informative as I can. I want to give you my opinions on the game. So all this reception and feedback has been amazing. Obviously, if you've liked the video up until this point, like, comment, subscribe. I really, really appreciate everybody that does that. But let's get back into Duelists. As we get into Duelists, I think there are 3 to 4 that are definitely a class above the rest, and the first one of those is going to be Winter Soldier. I mean, Bucky is just a menace. I talked about how good he is in any sort of composition. You can play him in poke, anti-dive, dive, brawl, whatever you want, and he can make it work, and he can make it work well, right? He's very, very good in all of those situations. His pull is a fantastic pick tool. It can start team fights and end team fights before they even really begin, because you can create a 6v5 man advantage for your team with relative relative ease. He's got pretty solid lockdown now that his fist also stops movement from individuals for 1 second. He also is pretty solid into flyers. Like, you can see how much utility he has and how many different kinds of archetypes of heroes he can deal with by himself, right? Tainted Voltage grounds people for a little bit. His fist makes it so that, you know, dive DPS like Daredevil, like Black Panther, Magic or whatever, can't really move if they get hit by it. He's got a lot of good front-loaded damage with his gun, and if you are cycling his abilities correctly, where you're not having to reload and instead using the ability reload trick, it is very, very good. He can constantly put on pressure both the front line, and his ultimate is relatively game-changing. Like, you just need your team to focus down whoever you ultimate, and you can just turn the tides of team fights. It demands an answer most of the time, whether it's a Magneto ultimate or a support ultimate, and he can build it up relatively quickly as long as you are landing your shots and you're landing at least 50% of your abilities. Winter Soldier is amazing. High Elo has already caught on to it. He's the most picked hero outside of Daredevil in High Elo, and that's only because Daredevil just released. Everybody's been catching on. He's very, very good. And I quite frankly think he's the best DPS in the game at the moment. The next duelist on this list is going to be Hela, and a couple different things had to happen for Hela to rise in Season 4.5. One of those things is that she did get a slight buff to her survivability. After her shift, she does gain bonus health, which is similar to how Star-Lord's work when he uses his evade, as well as Hela now enables 2 of Namor's team-ups. Obviously, the anti-dive team-up with the squids, as well as the reduced healing team-up, right? There are only 3 instances of reduced healing in this game. It's on Blade, it's on Venom, and it's on Namor with this Hela team-up, which is very, very valuable in any situation. The big thing that I think a lot of people are going to attribute to Hela's rise in Season 4.5 is the fact that Phoenix got nerfed pretty heavily this season, or the perception is that she is a much worse hero than Hela, which makes sense, right? She did lose her Beyblade tech, as well as some other cool tech. Her flight got nerfed and all that stuff, and now Hela has risen as that #1 hit scan DPS spot, where Phoenix was these past couple splits. Do I think they're that far apart? Not necessarily, and realistically, Hela is the highest banned duelist in the game. She sits at a 35% ban rate at the moment, and it only gets higher as you get into those Apex ranks like Grandmaster, Celestial, and Eternity. So even if you can't play Hela because she's banned out, you can still play Phoenix. I still think Phoenix is relatively good. She just requires a little bit more patience and a little bit understanding of how you need to position. But when you can get your hands on Hela, if she does somehow miraculously slip through the ban phase and you are a DPS or a hit scan player, please pick her up. She is very good, especially when paired up with Namor. They can just absolutely run lobbies, and High Elo has already figured this out, which is why they're banning her consistently. The next 2 duelists on this list I'm going to talk about together because they fulfill the same role. It's just dependent on the kind of playstyle that you like to play. Psylocke and Magic are 1A, 1B for dive duelists that have varying strengths, right? Psylocke is a lot more burst heavy. She's a lot quicker. Obviously, her ultimate just got buffed where she does more damage, and it's a lot faster on retargeting and the ability to move around. But Magic is a little bit more brawl heavy. Her ultimate has the ability to one-shot through other support ultimates if you can time it better. She has, I would argue, a sturdier or more brawl-heavy kind of mobility where you can go through the portals, you have iframes, right? You can gain bonus health. There's a lot more kind of incentive for Magic to be in the thick of it rather than just diving solo 1v1, which you still can do with Magic, but you can also transition into those like kind of brawl DPS style that Magic has become, especially because you get the reduced cooldown on her portals. Whereas with Psylocke, you're much more incentivized, I think, as she's always been, to farm ultimate as fast as possible and just let it rip on the backline before the supports get theirs, right? Of course, the increased damage is very nice. I've seen it now kind of kill through kind of the lower healing support ultimates like I would say Jeff or even Rocket. If you can get it off fast enough before they can use their ultimates, you can kill them while they're still healing, and you can kill other supports while they're still healing through it. Psylocke is very good. I don't think she needed the buffs necessarily. She was fine before, but these have just kind of made her, like I said, 1A, 1B. She's the premier dive duelist. I think Psylocke and Magic heavily outperform stuff like Black Panther, Daredevil, Spider-Man, pretty much any other dive duelist in the game, and they pair up very, very well with Venom, who I talked about earlier in this video. The next hero I want to talk about is going to be Moon Knight, and I think Moon Knight is kind of underestimated at the moment. I think he's in a really solid spot. Damage-wise, those buffs that he received to his Moonblade, where now he gets 2 charges of it, that's insane, right? Because he already had a very low ultimate charge cost. So adding an ability that allows him to charge it faster, aka extra damage, is really, really good. He can overload support ultimates very, very consistently if you combine him with something like a Rocket Raccoon and you increase the damage that his ultimate can do. You can also farm his ultimate relatively quickly, like I mentioned, and pretty much have his ult up prior to there being any answers from either a duo support line or even a triple support line. He is very good, and I think it's very important to master when you can play the Flank Knight playstyle versus when you can play the more brawl-centric kind of Moon Knight playstyle, where instead of going for the backline and taking the vertical space and looking for their supports or looking for the duelist that's out of position, you instead play this brawl-centric style where your job is to pressure shields or your job is to pressure the frontline tanks and force them out and just create space with your tanks, right? Just overloading the front line with a ton of damage and making them back up is important and can be useful, especially because you can farm your ultimate off of the tanks if they are playing a more bunched up brawl playstyle. I really like Moon Knight in this current meta. Yes, I think he's a class below the other duelists that I mentioned, but I think he's highly viable, and I think Hailu's kind of reflecting that. He has like a 10 to 11% pick rate at the moment in GM+, which is really good given how many duelists there are in the game and given how simplistic Moon Knight's kit has been perceived, as well as the general overall thing of like Moon Knight is a noob stomper. Well, he's finding success and people are picking him up in like Celestial and Eternity and stuff. So I think he's pretty good. I think you should especially pick him up if you are in those lower ranks and you're struggling to climb. Now we move on to the strategists, and the Jeff and Rocket Animal Crossing backline is as good as we thought it would be. Jeff is the highest band support in the game, with Rocket being right behind him, as well as Rocket boasting a 55% win rate across all ranks, and even in GM+, he hovers around like 53 to 55. It's absolutely insane. Anyone could have told you that bumping his damage boost back up to 40% on his ultimate would have put him over the edge. He synergizes so well with a majority of the Duelist cast. Also, with some of the tanks like Magneto, if you have a damage boosted Magneto ultimate, he can absolutely smite any of the support ultimates out of the way, right? Luna Snow, Invis, Mantis, doesn't matter the bonus health. A damage boosted Meteor M is absolutely going to squash any of those supports. They are very, very good. You can pick them together. You can pick them individually and pair them up with any of the new Holy Trinity of supports that I talked about, right? Luna, Invis, and Cloak are still played very well and are still played a ton. And when Jeff and Rocket aren't available, or when one of them aren't available, you can pick them with Luna Snow or Invisible Woman or Cloak, right? They're all still highly picked. They are still valuable, even in the higher elos. It's just Jeff and Rocket are on another level at the moment. Again, Luna, Invis, Cloak, you can pick them with relative success. They're still very, very good. They've got a lot of value with their ultimates, especially with Invisible Woman right now, receiving those buffs. She has risen in priority. I think she's slightly above Cloak, especially because Cloak recently got those ultimate charge cost nerfs where it takes a lot longer for her ult to come off. She still has a lot of utility, or they still have a lot of utility with like Terror Cloak and the, invulnerability and stuff like that. It's a pretty solid counter into Jeff, especially if you can time it into his ultimate. But yeah, it is absolutely difficult to fight into Jeff and Rocket, especially when Rocket is popping his ultimate in a smart position. If you are playing Rocket, if you're playing Jeff, don't be lazy, don't be greedy, right? Don't go for those 6-man eats all the time, because you have the ability to go for a 2-man or a 3-man and just create that man advantage for your team. Jeff is one of the few supports, if not the only support in the game, that can create an instantaneous man advantage, or like within 5 seconds, create a 6v6 into a 5v3 or a 6v3 relatively quickly. And obviously, Rocket has the ability to just counter every support ultimate in the game, especially because the Jeff Rocket backline, their ultimates charge faster than stuff like Luna and Invis and Cloak, right? Rocket has the lowest ultimate charge cost in the game for a support, or one of the lowest, so he's always going to outvalue something like a Luna. Jeff, albeit, has a higher support ultimate charge cost because he can cleave through his teammates and through enemies. He's always going to be building that up first. So it doesn't really matter that you don't have proper defensive capabilities like a Luna would or an Invis would. As long as you are outvaluing the enemy supports from 2-to-1 ultimates, right? The next fight you take, even if you get wiped out by like a Psylocke or a Winter Soldier because you don't have your amplifier, you'll have amplifier by next fight. And the Luna Snow won't have ultimate, or the Invis won't have ultimate. So as long as you're getting 2-for-1 value on multiple rounds, which you generally are, as long as you're being smart about your heals and you're passing them through your teammates with your rocket, with your healing bubbles, or you're being like Jeff and you're just weaving it through your whole team, yeah, you are almost always going to be in a better position against, I think, like a Luna Invis backline or a Luna Cloak backline. Those three are still good. Still highly recommend playing him. There is one other comp that we have been seeing, but it's really only played in pro play and really, really high elo. This comp consists of Luna Snow, Adam Warlock, and the final one being Loki. And it capitalizes on essentially having 2 full team reses, and it's really, really good. It's insane. Obviously, Adam and Loki individually are not meta per se, but this comp absolutely rocks team fights. It is highly dependent on how well your supports are coordinated, because obviously these support ultimates take a long time to charge, and you have to be on point with how you use them. You cannot by any means double support ultimate in this composition, because you lose pretty much all sort of footing or grounding or value that you would have with this composition. Good luck wiping a team and essentially winning 3 team fights in a row, right? Because you have to wipe them once, then you have to wipe them when they get Adam rezzed, then you have to wipe them again when Loki copies his Adam and gives the res. On top of that, they have the availability of 2 soul bonds to themselves, right, for their teams, because it's a copied Adam plus it's the regular Adam, as well as Luna has her own soul bond for herself that prevents any sort of anti-dive or dive shenanigans that would happen on their backline. Lamps are super valuable as an individual ability. Like, the thing is, this is a very high value support line, but it requires a high level of communication and execution to get the most value out of it, which is why I don't think like gold and plat players will necessarily be able to pull this off, because you will just see a double support ultimate from these guys and it won't be pretty. And then you'll just you'll be sitting on like 50% or 30% for a lot of the fight on your support ultimate charges, especially because it's a 3 support composition and support ultimates charge a lot less frequently and a lot slower in those 3 support comps, because there's more healing going around and keeping everybody topped off. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, as that all helps me out a ton. I try and respond to every single one of the comments in my videos, because I generally do appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to leave one, as well as I love interacting with my own community. If you want to see more of my content, I stream over on Twitch about 3 to 4 times a week, starting around 7 p.m. PST. Over there, you'll get unedited versions of my videos, as well as we go over gameplay reviews, patch notes, and you guys can ask questions in the chat, and I respond pretty quickly. If you care more for short form content, I upload daily on both YouTube Shorts and TikTok. Over there, you'll get condensed versions of my videos, as well as stream highlights and my general thoughts on the game. All of that will be in the description box below, as well as a pop-up that will show up on the right side of the screen here telling you where to go and all my handles. I really do appreciate all of you, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.